So the Eat Lancet Commission just revealed what they're calling the Planetary Health Diet. Basically, it's a global plan for how they think everyone should eat, supposedly to save the planet and to improve human health. They're claiming that if this diet were enforced worldwide, it could prevent 40,000 early deaths a day, cut food-related greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2050, and help feed the planet's projected 9.6 billion people by 2050. This honestly sounds like the start of a bad joke, but when you look at who's bankrolling it, you start to realize the scientists at Eat Lancet could not be more serious. But we'll get to that later. Okay, so this comes straight out of their own report. And get this, the authors, many of whom proudly call themselves ethical vegans, are saying that most of your calories should come from grains, about 775 calories out of a 2,000 calorie diet. Translation: bread, rice, cereal, repeat. Then right behind that, seed oils. Literally the same oils that were originally designed for engine lubricant and the same oils that are linked to inflammation and chronic disease are now a core food group. And to top it all off, a big chunk of your remaining calories comes from, and you're gonna love this one, sugar. So basically over half your diet would be grains, seed oils, and sugar. And believe it or not, fruits and vegetables only represent a tiny portion of this diet, just over 10%. Even most vegans I know would take issue with that. And come on, I am an ex-vegan here. I used to be vegan for 6 whole years. Predominantly what I ate, like 90% of my diet, were whole foods. And I was a whole foods plant-based vegan. So most of my diet was fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, some rice, starches, potatoes, sweet potatoes, and lots of vegetables steamed. How can only 10% be fresh fruits and vegetables? So now let's talk about the foods they definitely do not want you eating. Because if grains, seed oils, and sugar make up the bulk of this so-called planetary health diet, guess what's getting pushed out? Meat, eggs, dairy, and animal fat. You get about 100 calories a day from dairy. So hey, maybe a few sips of milk or half a slice of cheese. When it comes to eggs, you're allowed 20 calories, and that's about a third of an egg. And for meat, real meat like beef, pork, or lamb, you get 15 grams. That's less than half an ounce. Fish, even less. And if that's not bad enough, animal fat is practically eliminated. 0 to 5 grams a day, an abysmally small amount. So you won't starve immediately, but your body won't have the building blocks it needs for energy, hormones, brain function, or even basic satiety. Now here's why it sounds like a joke to me. Look at the countries already closest to this planetary health diet and judge for yourself. The pattern is not pretty, and it's not theoretical. It's happening now. Take, for example, India, where over 80% of adults limit meat in some way, either by avoiding certain meats or skipping it altogether. As a result, India has one of the lowest per capita meat consumption rates globally, and instead they rely heavily on grains, legumes, and nuts. Exactly what this planetary diet calls for. What are the results? Let's take a look. India has some of the highest rates of heart disease and diabetes. A significant portion of the population is stunted. Many suffer from mental disorders, and fertility rates are declining drastically. Okay, let's look at another one. How about Mexico's rapid shift to cheap processed calories? They're high in refined grains, high in seed oils, and definitely high in sugar. Well, guess what? Obesity and diabetes in Mexico have absolutely exploded over the last 2 decades. And in parts of Africa and East Africa, urbanization is driving similar patterns. Traditional, nutrient-dense staples are now being replaced in many places by processed snacks, refined grains, and seed oils, with the same public health outcomes. Cities that have already swapped traditional diets for ultra-processed foods now have some of the highest adult metabolic disease rates in the world. That is the textbook outcome of a food system that prioritizes high-grain, low-animal foods. If countries already eating like this are drowning in metabolic disease, obesity, infertility, and nutrient deficiencies, how exactly is this diet supposed to save 40,000 lives a day? Newsflash: it's not. The grains, the seed oils, the refined carbs are now being rebranded as planet-saving nutrition, and it's bankrolled by huge pharmaceutical companies that literally make billions every time someone takes the same drugs people end up on because of diets like this. Keep people hooked, sick, and dependent, and call it saving the planet. And here's the kicker. These are not fringe players. We're talking about the Rockefeller Foundation, Novo Nordisk, the company behind Ozempic and Wegovy, and behind the curtain, BlackRock, one of the biggest investors in fake meat. So, what does that say to you? To help me unpack what's really going on here, I have to bring on my friend, colleague, and a very special guest that I know you guys already love and listen to because he's one of the most outspoken voices against plant based global agendas, Dr. Anthony Chafee.
The original Eat Lancet guidelines were highly criticized at the time, and the new Eat Lancet guidelines, I'm sure, will get the same vitriol. John Ioannidis, who's a professor of medicine and epidemiology at Stanford, he's the most cited researcher in history of any field. Your prestige comes from how many people cite your work. That's how useful your work is. If other people reference it and say, hey, according to this study, we showed this, and now we're going to draw these conclusions. John Ioannidis has more citations, more people have cited his work than anyone else in the history of academia in any field. And it's in the middle of his career, right? So this guy is prolific. He's getting thousands and thousands and thousands of citations a month, about 6,500 citations a month last time I checked. He said about the original Eat Lancet guidelines that this was more science fiction than science. And I totally agree. The processed food industry makes trillions of dollars a year. So they obviously want to perpetuate that. That is a largely plant-based institution. So they're pushing this plant-based narrative. They pump out hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars a year in nutritional, quote unquote, research that promotes a plant-based diet and dissuades people away from eating meat because they know statistically that if you stop eating meat and you start going vegetarian or vegan, you're not eating fresh quinoa salads. You're eating processed junk food. You're eating ready-made meals. You're eating Oreo cookies and Doritos. They're recommending we eat nutritionally deficient foods that have a lot of anti-nutrients that will block out proper nutrient absorption, phytic acid, lectins, tannins, oxalates, saponins, protease inhibitors, leptin. Food recommendations right now are fairly similar to that. Well, we're getting fatter and sicker than we've ever been, but you know what? Only 9% of people follow the nutrition guidelines. So obviously it's not the guidelines' fault. Well, actually, if you look from the 1980s to now, we've sort of, this slow transition, we've started changing. And actually look at the consumption data, we've been reducing red meat, we've been reducing saturated fat and cholesterol, increasing fruits and vegetables, grains, seed oils, tripled sugar, things like that. And so while we aren't on the exact guidelines, we're moving in that direction. People have gotten sick and worse since then. So if people do go on this diet and eat predominantly grain, sugar, and seed oils, they will become diabetic. They'll become metabolically dysfunctional. They'll become sick. They'll likely develop autoimmune disorders and all of the constellation of issues that come from hyperglycemia, insulin resistance, and damage to the arteries, because the damage from diabetes comes from damage to the arteries. High blood sugar damages everything it touches. It's called glycation. Permanently sticks to, binds, and damages every molecule it comes to. So it's in your blood vessels, so it's damaging everything in your bloodstream. It's also damaging the blood vessel itself. So why we get heart disease. This is why we get damage to the blood supply to our organs. The number one risk factor for kidney failure is diabetes. Number one cause of adult onset blindness, diabetes. Alzheimer's being called type 3 diabetes. Mm-hmm. The number one cause of amputations, getting your legs chopped off and having to be basically crippled, is diabetes. And then the consequence of this, of high blood sugar, is high insulin, because your body's desperately trying to put out that fire of damage from the blood sugar. And that causes damage itself, because insulin affects hundreds of other processes in the body and the brain. It's very important to keep that in balance. It blocks autophagy, for example. People talk about, you should fast for a number of days so you can turn on autophagy and build more mitochondria. Well, you can just stop eating carbohydrates and seed oils and get rid of that insulin resistance, and you'll get the same effects. So in women, insulin blocks the conversion of testosterone into estrogen. So you have too much testosterone, not enough estrogen, you get PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, number one leading cause of infertility. And that's now being called type 4 diabetes. It downregulates the LH receptors on the Leydig cells in the testicles in men, which reduces testosterone production. So you get low testosterone levels. It blocks the production and action of growth hormone from the pituitary in both men and women, stunting growth in adolescents who are growing and causing faster aging and tissue degradation in adults. Science is just, a technique and a tool to elicit the truth. They're not using science. They're using propaganda.
Let's be honest, if you're even watching this, chances are you're not following the planetary health diet. You're probably doing the opposite. Let me just give you a tip because this is one of the biggest mistakes that I see over and over again. New carnivores coming to me in the community, the steak and butter gang, saying, I just have no energy. I'm literally waking up in the middle of the night with muscle cramps. I have headaches. My energy's not the same. I don't know if carnivore's for me. Before you jump to that conclusion, let me just bring up that electrolyte imbalance is very much a real thing. You can either just salt all of your carnivore meals generously with a high quality salt, and I'll link my favorites down below, or you can just lean on a high quality electrolyte supplement that does the whole job for you. This is the one that I always recommend from the brand Element, and only specifically this teal colored box, it is labeled a raw unflavored. Raw unflavored is the way to go because we do not need stevia, we don't need sweet tasting flavors on our tongue when we're drinking this every day. So this blue one has the sodium, potassium, and magnesium that our body needs already measured out for us in each little packet. Easy to travel with. You just rip one open, pour it in whatever you're drinking, mix it up, drink it down, and you are good to go. And it really should resolve those pesky initial adaptation symptoms. You all can get a free sample pack with any purchase if you go to the URL shown on the screen, drinklmnt.com/SBGAL. I've also linked them down below.
So they're using food frequency questionnaires. They ask people every 4 years or so, tell me everything you ate in the last 4 years. That's inherently inaccurate. And then they do other things such as saying, well, fast food has meat, like a hamburger. Forget the fries and the bun and the drink. So you eat meat if you eat fast food. You have pizza that can have meat on it. That's meat. So a lasagna or a casserole. I mean, things that are multi-ingredient items, generally highly processed with highly processed and refined carbohydrates or sugars. That is not actually separating out whole meats separate from all the other garbage. So what they're really looking at is processed food versus a whole food diet. McMaster University published something called the Purist Study, which actually used the same methodology as used in the food frequency questionnaires, but they didn't do it in a fraudulent and purposefully propagandistic way. They actually were trying to do real science and get real information. They found exactly the opposite conclusions, that actually increased meat consumption and proteins from meats had no deleterious health effects. And in fact, they found a protective association between more meat consumption and your risk of cancer. So actually reduced your cancer risk if you ate more. They found absolutely no increased risk of any harm being done. And that's in a mixed diet. That's with eating other things as well. But they separate out the junk food and the garbage from actual meat.
The planetary health diet might sound noble on the surface, but when you strip away the marketing, it's just the same story we have seen over and over again. Powerful institutions engineering a system that keeps people weak and dependent, all while cashing in on the consequences. That just makes me livid, by the way. It breaks my heart because I was a victim to that system. I thought a vegan diet was the answer, and I was brainwashed into thinking that I had to stick to it for a whole 6 years before I was slapped back into reality and I woke the Sorry, I don't want to cuss, but I am just very pissed off when I talk about these topics, just because I have so many members coming into my steak and butter gang who are sick as ever. They are struggling, they are in pain, they are suffering, their mental health is in shambles, their physical health, don't even get me started. I truly believe that if you have fallen victim to this type of evil system and you are struggling, you're in pain, and you need to heal, a carnivore diet is the way. There is no better diet and way of eating to heal you inside out than a carnivore diet. While the system is busy trying to control what we eat, I am going to continue to focus on staying strong, grounded, and healthy no matter where I am. And I personally do that 2 ways. Okay. I stay connected to my carnivore tribe online. It truly is the best community I have ever been a part of. I recommend you start an Instagram page, you start that YouTube channel, and you start talking about your carnivore testimonial, your story, your healing journey. I promise you the world needs it. Second thing, I make sure to only order from the most trusted, high quality farms and ranches now. I really don't go to grocery stores anymore, especially with all of these updates and news and videos that I am spotlighting about things that are being snuck into our everyday ingredients. Nope. I'm just going to order direct from the source. Raw dairy I get from Miller's Bio Farm, grass-fed, grass-finished meats, and ranch-raised meats from the USA I get straight from my favorite farms, Dry Lakes Ranch, US Wellness Meats, and Billy Doe Meats. That's all I eat these days. And Don't worry, I'll make sure to link everything down below so that you too can build a fantastic relationship and support our American ranches and farms. Just open the description box. And finally, I do love biohacking, and this part is unnecessary, okay? If you are deep into healing, please just focus on eating a carnivore diet and actually being consistent with it, because the key is consistency here. But if you are healed, you are loving your life, you are healthy, and you're feeling fantastic with carnivore, and you're ready to do an extra step, then I have been loving biohacking from Bon Charge. I have their red light glasses, their blue blockers. I have their red light face mask, and I use it every night for my skin. I have their sauna blanket, and I have their grounding mat. So I have now 4 of their awesome biohacking products that I just incorporate in my daily life now because it makes me happy. And it also does make a difference in my skin. I feel like I'm extra glowy, which therefore boosts my confidence even more. And the red blue blockers that I wear every night are just a must because I'm constantly in front of blue light for hours upon hours upon hours, filming for you guys, editing, showing up to my meetings in the steak and butter gang. So I do like to make sure I'm protecting my eyes when it's dark outside by popping on my red blue light blocking glasses. This helps me unwind at night and sleep really well so that the next morning I am full of energy and I am ready to go. Bon Charge is always linked down below my description box. You can use my discount code SBGAL for 15% off your order. It would also make fantastic gifts for the holidays. All right, that's it for today. Let me know your thoughts about all this craziness down below in the comments. Let's get the conversation rolling and let's keep learning from each other. Thank you so much for watching the video, and I hope to see you in my next one. SBG out.